Russian Interior Ministry plans to introduce the loyalty agreement for foreigners, in which they want to prohibit, quote, abusing the right of freedom of information. For example, citizens of foreign countries who enter Russia must promise that they will not doubt the correctness of Kremlin's actions and decisions or Russia's contribution to the victory over fascism. Also, under no circumstances should they spread propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations or deny traditional family values.
Whether this will increase tourism in Russia? Of course not. Fewer and fewer people are willing to come to Russia as tourists. We are definitely not in the ranks of tourist countries. And then there are all sorts of interferences from the state, from law enforcement agencies. Naturally, this is done simply so that the alternative point of view, or the truth, which foreigners can tell, did not reach the Russians. Well, maybe it will be like North Korea.
The idea of obliging foreigners to sign such agreements was first proposed by Ministry of Interior in 2021. At that time, the matter did not reach the draft law. Now, Moscow is using the chance to further isolate Russians from the outside world, human rights activists believe. Meanwhile, inside the Federation itself, the regime is increasing repressions. A court in the Altai Republic fined local resident Oleg Melnikov 15,000 rubles for a poem published on social media.
I remember one rather high-profile case with the poet Alexander Bывших. Let's remember his name, Alexander Bывших. He is now in the pre-trial detention center in the city of Oryol. He was prosecuted for a number of poems. I remember this case very well. I think one poem was called "To the Russian Officers." Since 2014 he published several times in different Russian social networks poems written in support of Ukraine. And already in the 2022 he published a number of such poems, ended up in jail. And basically the fine. As you can see, this is not the worst thing that to expect.
A Moscow city court has handed down a ruling in absentia for writer Dmitry Gluchovsky. In August, he was found guilty of spreading fakes about the Russian army. The popular author was sentenced to 8 years in prison for posting messages on social networks about the Russian army shelling residential areas of Ukrainian cities and killing civilians.
Mostly we are talking about posts. People from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Federal Security Service, the relevant departments, they monitor social networks, look for some statements. This is the main motive of those who are brought to this responsibility, those who are caught making some statement on the internet.
Russian courts recognize any anti-war statements as fakes and discreditation. According to Mediazona calculations, by October 2023, more than 8,000 cases of so-called discreditation of the Russian army had been brought in Russia. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Yulia Bil, UATV News.